And imagine an ancient force, the demiurge, the false god of this world, weaving a grand design behind every war, every economic collapse, every twist of fate. In Gnostic lore, the demiurge is an oppressive, ignorant ruler, intentionally binding souls in an inherently corrupt material realm. Now imagine a family who for centuries may have served as that false god's high priests on earth. This is the theory: the Rothschild family, once the wealthiest dynasty on the planet, are agents of the demiurge. They are seen not merely as bankers, but as architects of control, chosen elites carrying out the will of an unseen dark power. It sounds like the plot of an esoteric thriller, yet countless conspiracy researchers insist it's real. They claim the Rothschilds pull invisible strings across world finance, politics, and secret societies. That they sit at the apex of a hidden pyramid of power, generational satanic bloodlines described bluntly as Satan's elite. In this narrative, the Rothschilds are more than moguls, they are the demiurge's lieutenants, orchestrating human events as rituals of control and sacrifice. Tonight, we delve into this high-level conspiracy theory. We will explore how a banking family from Frankfurt allegedly came to hold nations in their palm and enthrone war over peace. We will probe claims of their influence over Vatican gold and Zionist destiny, their role in secret councils and occult rites, and the dark symbolism, from blood-soaked wars to masked balls, that trails them. Strap in for a journey through whispers and archives, where kings and popes bow to bankers, where wars are waged as sacrifices, and where a false god's plan may lurk in the shadows. The hour of revelation is at hand. Dynasty of darkness, wealth beyond kings to grasp the Rothschild mystique. We begin with cold, hard fact: no family amassed a fortune as vast in the 19th century. By the 1800s, the Rothschilds possessed the largest private fortune in the world, as well as in modern world history. 5 brothers, sprung from the Frankfurt ghetto, spread across Europe, London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, Frankfurt, forming an international banking empire. Their wealth and reach grew unprecedented. As one 1835 report marveled, the Rothschilds are the wonders of modern banking, peering above kings, rising higher than emperors, and holding a whole continent in the hollow of their hands. Not a cabinet moves without their advice. This was no hyperbole. The Rothschilds financed emperors and republics alike. They bankrolled kings, dined with prime ministers, and greased the rails of the Industrial Revolution. Crucially, they mastered the art of war finance. The family's London patriarch, Nathan Rothschild, virtually single-handedly funded Britain's pivotal campaigns against Napoleon. From 1813 to 1815, he arranged shipments of gold to the Duke of Wellington's armies, money that helped seal Napoleon's defeat. But in the conspiratorial view, aiding Britain was only half the story. They profited from all sides. Indeed, records confirm the Rothschilds financed wars, including both sides in the Napoleonic Wars. This audacious strategy, lending to opposing nations, ensured that no matter who fell, the House of Rothschild would rise. It worked brilliantly. By the end of that war, the family had no equal in financial power. A contemporary observer noted that Baron Nathan Rothschild holds the keys to peace or war. They are the brokers and counselors of the kings of Europe and of the Republican chiefs of America. What more can they desire? Victors and vanquished alike emerged indebted to this private empire. In the ensuing decades, the Rothschild Bank became synonymous with supranational clout, underwriting government bonds from London to Vienna, rescuing central banks, and quietly absorbing rivals. Money is power, and they had an ocean of it. Yet with great power came great suspicion. By the late 1800s, whispers of a hidden agenda surrounded the family. The German writer Friedrich von Sturb charged that the House of Rothschild has arisen from quarrels between states, has become great and mighty from wars. The misfortune of states and peoples has been its fortune. In other words, every war that bled nations dry made the Rothschilds richer. Other critics asked pointedly, could any major war even happen without Rothschild support? In 1902, economist J. A. Hobson wrote, "Does anyone seriously suppose that a great war could be undertaken by any European state, or a great state loan subscribed, if the House of Rothschild and their connections set their face against it?" To Hobson, no government could fight on if Rothschild refused to finance it. Money controls empires, and one family controlled the money. These aren't modern internet theories, these were observations of their own era. By the dawn of the 20th century, the Rothschilds had already been accused of everything from deliberately starting wars for profit to orchestrating the assassinations of uncooperative leaders. The idea of a secretive cabal of bankers manipulating world events was entering the public consciousness. Cartoons depicted them as puppet masters, pamphlets denounced their alleged intrigues. For conspiracy believers, the Rothschilds became the prime example of the hidden hand, the unseen force that guides history. Masters of war, profit and blood, money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet, a French journalist once quipped. If war is one of that false god's rituals, the Rothschilds have long been its high financiers. Consider the War of 1812. Conspiracy law holds that Nathan Rothschild was enraged when the young United States refused to renew a central bank charter that benefited his interests. In London, he allegedly issued a chilling ultimatum to British leaders: either the application for the renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself involved in a most disastrous war. When the charter renewal failed by one vote in 1811, war indeed broke out between Britain and America the next year. Teach these impudent Americans a lesson. Bring them back to colonial status, Nathan reportedly instructed. America was drawn into conflict, incurring huge debts, and, as conspiracists note, by 1816 a new Rothschild-linked central bank was established on U.S. soil. War, debt, and central control, a pattern had been set. Decades later, in 1861, the American Civil War erupted. Historians attribute it to slavery and secession, but some whisper of European bankers pulling strings. It's said the Rothschilds tried to influence President Lincoln's financing of the war, when Lincoln instead issued debt-free greenbacks. It purportedly signed his death warrant. John Wilkes Booth, the assassin, was alleged by some to have indirect ties to secret societies, igniting speculation of a higher-order conspiracy. Whether or not the Rothschilds touched the Civil War or Lincoln's fate, their pattern of war profiteering was well established in Europe. From the Crimean War to Prussia's conflicts, the family's loans greased the war machines of Europe, often on multiple sides. They learned that bloodshed could yield immense returns. By the turn of the 20th century, cynics darkly joked that the Rothschilds conjured wars like magicians conjure rabbits. The Boer War in South Africa, 1899 to 1902, for instance, was denounced by some contemporary observers as a banker's war for gold and diamonds. Hobson pointed to small groups of financiers, chiefly German Jewish, in whose hands the control of South African mining interests lies, naming Rothschild as principal among them. He argued these financiers pushed Britain into the Boer conflict for economic gain. True or not, the image stuck. Behind the fog of war loomed the tall, shadowy figure of a Rothschild counting coins. World War I and II later unleashed unprecedented carnage, and again the whispers resurfaced. When Britain was on the brink of entering World War I, a pivotal document emerged, the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a letter from British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour addressed personally to Lord Walter Rothschild. In it, Britain promised support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. To the conspiracy-minded, this was no coincidence. They see it as a quid pro quo, Zionist influence, led by Rothschild, bringing the US into World War I on Britain's side, in exchange for Palestine. The letter famously begins, "Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations." Thus, at the climax of the Great War, the Rothschild hand is visibly present, midwifing a geopolitical shift that would reverberate for decades. The pattern intensified with World War II. The Holocaust's unspeakable tragedy directly paved the way for the creation of Israel in 1948, a goal long nurtured by Rothschild philanthropy. In fact, the Rothschilds had been funding Zionist settlements since the 1880s. Baron Edmund de Rothschild, known in Israel as Har Nadiv, the benefactor, bankrolled early communities and land purchases in Palestine. Later, James de Rothschild would finance the construction of Israel's Knesset, parliament, building. Conspiracy researchers suggest that both world wars served a dual purpose: enormous profit through arms and loans, and the blood sacrifice needed to justify a new world order, including a Rothschild-influenced foothold in the Holy Land. In their view, the Demiurge's grand design required two apocalyptic wars, millions of lives offered on the altar of power, to cement an elite grip on global affairs. And at the heart of it, directing the grisly symphony, sat the Rothschild dynasty, smiling financiers of slaughter. Whether one believes these claims or not, one thing is undeniable: war made the Rothschilds indispensable to governments. The family's fortune and influence ballooned with each major conflict. As far back as 1823, poet Heinrich Heine wrote, "Money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet." In conspiracy circles, they take that literally, seeing the Rothschilds as prophets and profiteers of a false god who feeds on the chaos of war. Every time cannons boomed and markets panicked, the false god Demiurge grew stronger, and so did the banks. Could it be that war itself is a ritual sacrifice, orchestrated by hidden priests of money to fuel an unseen deity? It's a harrowing thought, but we're just getting started. Secret societies, the invisible hand. If the Rothschilds truly are agents of an otherworldly demiurge, one would expect them to sit atop a web of secret societies and occult orders. Indeed, conspiracy lore places the family at the pinnacle of the Illuminati, that fabled secret brotherhood said to manipulate world events. Here fringe testimony and legend intertwine. One famous whistleblower, John Todd, also known as Lance Collins, claimed to be a defector from the Illuminati's highest circles. Todd boldly asserted that the Rothschilds lead the Illuminati, describing the Illuminati as a grand druid council of 13 witches who meet on occult holy days. According to Todd, this council of 13 takes orders directly from the Rothschild family, whom he called the capstone of the Illuminati pyramid. The capstone is the Rothschild tribunal that rules the Illuminati. They were the creators of it. The eye is Lucifer, their god and their voice. The Council of 13 only take orders from the Rothschilds and nobody else. They're their private priesthood, Todd revealed. In his account, the Rothschilds are the literal top of the Illuminati hierarchy, acting as the intermediaries between Lucifer, the false light, the demiurge, and all the lower orders of darkness. This aligns with other researchers' conclusions. Author Fritz Springmeier, who exhaustively studied so-called Illuminati bloodlines, wrote that it's nonsense to think any family stands above the Rothschilds in the secret order. He had interviewed self-proclaimed insiders who unanimously confirmed that the Rothschilds are one of the top families. Over generations they have only increased their control and wealth. The overall picture can't be denied he wrote. The Rothschilds are not flunkies for some other more powerful family. In other words, they are the power behind the throne, not serving a mortal master but, perhaps, something far more insidious. Springmeier flatly calls the Illuminati for generational satanic bloodlines, the occult oligarchies that rule the world from the shadows. And at the apex of this pyramid of bloodlines sits the House of Rothschild. Through this lens, many baffling historical oddities snap into focus. Why did so many US presidents and statesmen speak of an invisible government or a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, controlling things behind the scenes? Woodrow Wilson alluded to it. Teddy Roosevelt warned of unseen hands in the gears of government. Conspiracy analysts answer, it's the Illuminati, led by families like Rothschild. They point out that by controlling vast wealth, the Rothschilds could infiltrate Freemasonry, the Knights of Malta, and other secret orders, co-opting their networks. Indeed, in the 1800s, many European aristocrats and politicians were Freemasons. A family as influential as the Rothschilds would almost certainly have had brothers in the lodge. Some even claim Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati, 1776, was an early front that the Rothschilds later commandeered after it went underground. Legends abound. There are tales, difficult to verify, of the Rothschilds hosting bizarre occult rituals. One such tale, in 1840, Nathan Rothschild's funeral in London reportedly included an enigmatic rite where a red liquid was drunk from a skull, a detail that, if true, smacks of ritual symbolism. True believers say the family's very name, Rothschild, German for red shield, hints at bloodline and protection, a shield colored by the blood of ages. The 5 arrows on the Rothschild coat of arms, representing Meyer Amschel's 5 sons, is likened to the 5 points of a pentagram. To those steeped in occult symbolism, these are not coincidences but calling cards of a demonic allegiance. We do know the Rothschilds carefully intermarried to preserve power, marrying cousins to keep their fortune and secrets in the family. Perhaps this also kept occult knowledge tightly held within their clan. John Todd even alleged that the Rothschilds' private inner coven personally chooses members of the Grand Druid Council, effectively handpicking who ascends in the Illuminati ranks. A terrifying prospect, a family that can decide who becomes part of the ruling occult elite, like a dark papacy anointing cardinals. And then there's the matter of meetings and societies. The Rothschilds have been involved in founding or funding many exclusive gatherings of power. The Bilderberg Group, a secretive annual meeting of political and economic elites since 1954, often features Rothschild representatives, continuing the tradition of whispering into the ears of presidents and prime ministers. The family's French branch was instrumental in the Trilateral Commission and European Union creation. Their banks shaped the EU's financial structure from the shadows. Conspiracy theorists also frequently place Rothschild figures at the core of organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations and World Economic Forum, influencing global policy behind a veil of philanthropy and intellectualism. In short, wherever global power brokers convene in secret, a Rothschild is likely nearby, or so the narrative goes. All of this paints a picture of an invisible hand with a very real name. What sets this conspiracy apart is the spiritual dimension. The Rothschilds are not seen merely as greedy bankers, but as occult caretakers of an ancient plan. A plan to subjugate humanity under a new world order ruled not openly by them, but by the demiurge they serve. In the next segments, we'll see how this dark scheme allegedly extends even into the holiest sanctums on earth, and how symbols of blood and sacrifice mark the path of the Rothschilds. The guardians of the papal treasure. In a twist fit for a Dan Brown novel, the Rothschild dynasty forged intimate ties with the Vatican itself. It's a historical fact often cited with ominous undertones. As early as 1832, Pope Gregory XVI turned to the Rothschild Bank for a crucial loan. That year, Karl von Rothschild met the Pope in a private audience to arrange a £400,000 loan to the Holy See, a staggering sum, equivalent to billions today. Observers were astonished at what they saw. Unlike every other visitor, even monarchs, Karl Rothschild was not required to kiss the Pope's feet in reverence. This break in protocol sent a clear signal. In that moment, the Pope treated the Jewish banker as an equal, even a savior, of the Church's finances. Such deference to a Rothschild was unheard of. It spurred rumors that the family had gained extraordinary influence in Vatican affairs. Soon after, the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia would famously describe the Rothschilds as the guardians of the papal treasure. Indeed, for much of the 19th and early 20th century, Rothschild banks in Naples, Paris, and London handled the Vatican's investments and debts. They became the financial pillar of the Roman Catholic Church. Conspiracy theorists revel in this irony. The Catholic Pope, supposedly the Vicar of Christ, relying on a family often accused of Luciferian allegiance. They ask, was this mere business, or the false god inserting its agents into the heart of the Church? The association persisted. In the 1850s, when Pope Pius IX needed funds to rebuild the Papal States after political upheaval, the Rothschilds once again stepped in with a massive loan. By then it was almost taken for granted, if the Vatican needed money, it went to Rothschild. Some have claimed the popes granted the family special status, even knighthoods of a Christian order, as thanks for their service. Baron Lionel de Rothschild did receive a papal honor in 1847, despite being Jewish, which raised eyebrows. Fast forward to modern times, one of the most eyebrow-raising partnerships emerged in 2020, when Pope Francis lent the Vatican's moral authority to a new council for inclusive capitalism, in league with Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. Lady Lynn, wife of Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, spearheaded a coalition of global CEOs and investment titans, explicitly backed by the Vatican's blessing. The alliance's founding members included megacorporations like Bank of America, BP, Johnson & Johnson, MasterCard, and the Rockefeller Foundation. and at its helm, Linda Rothschild, working closely with the Pope as the initiative's moral leader. In effect, the Vatican and the Rothschilds joined hands to reform capitalism. To conspiracy analysts, this was blatant. The Church was in bed with the financial elite to shape a new world order. While media lauded the effort as progressive, skeptics saw centuries-old machinations. A new global alliance, with Pope Francis as its moral leader on one side and Rothschild on the other, pushing an agenda that blurs the line between corporate power and spiritual authority. Lady Rothschild herself stated the group isn't just for big corporations, and that though the Pope advises it, the Council is firmly non-sectarian. But the symbolism was potent. A Rothschild convening the guardians of the global economy at the Vatican, it felt like the Illuminati had finally stepped into the light, cloaking itself as a force for good. If one was seeking to enthrone the demiurge on earth, uniting religious and economic power under one agenda would be a logical step, would it not? Dark whispers go further. They claim that beneath the Vatican's pious exterior lurks an inner sanctum of occult practice, entwined with elite families. The most shocking allegation comes from a woman known as Svali, who says she was born into an Illuminati bloodline. In a 2006 interview, Svali calmly described a nightmarish ritual she witnessed at age 12 in the catacombs beneath the Vatican. "I was told it would be a very important ceremony. I saw an actual child sacrifice, a child about 3 or 4, killed on an obsidian altar in a stone chamber beneath the ground. High-ranking clergy and power brokers were allegedly present." This gruesome claim, a human sacrifice in the Vatican, is almost beyond comprehension. The Church vehemently denies such horror. Yet Svali's testimony persists on the fringe, fueling the notion that an inner circle within the Vatican partakes in rituals to empower something other than the Christian God. If true, and that's a big if, it would mean the Rothschilds' relationship with Rome goes far beyond loans and investments. It would mean the false god, demiurge, had infiltrated the Holy of Holies. The Rothschilds, as alleged demiurge agents, could be facilitators of this unholy communion. Even without Svali's account, the historical record shows the Vatican bank scandals often involve secretive sects, like the P2 Masonic Lodge scandal in the 1980s, and shady financiers. It's as if a spiritual corruption dogs the institution whenever it entangles with worldly bankers. At the very least, the Rothschild-Vatican connection demonstrates that no realm of power, secular or sacred, lay beyond the family's reach. They had the ears of emperors and the keys to the Pope's treasury. Conspiracy theorists ask, if you effectively control a nation's money and a church's gold, do you not own those institutions? Are you not the power behind thrones and altars alike? In their view, the demiurge's web ensnares both palace and temple, and the Rothschilds have been the spiders spinning those silken threads for ages. Zion and the New World Order. The establishment of Israel in 1948 is often hailed as the fulfillment of an ancient promise. But in conspiracy lore, it's also seen as the fruition of a century-long project of the global elite, with the Rothschilds at the helm. As we noted, Walter Rothschild's name is literally on the Balfour Declaration, signifying how integral the family was in creating a Jewish state. They were midwives to Israel's birth, funding Zionist movements, purchasing land, and lobbying governments. Baron Edmund de Rothschild spent millions establishing Jewish colonies in Palestine decades before Israel existed. It's said he would tour the Holy Land incognito, going by a father of the settlement to survey the towns he financed. When Israel did arise, the new nation's grateful leaders honored the family, naming streets after Rothschild, inviting James de Rothschild to sponsor the Knesset building, which he did, and Dorothy de Rothschild to donate the Supreme Court building. The Rothschild imprint is literally built into the stones of Israel's statehood. To conspiracy theorists, Israel's creation was deeply intertwined with the elite's agenda. Some argue that having a loyal foothold in the Middle East served the emerging New World Order. It provided a pretext for endless regional conflict, which arms dealers and bankers profit from, and a strategic center for global finance and espionage. The Rothschilds' long courtship of Zionism might therefore not have been purely philanthropic but pragmatic, establishing a power base outside the control of any other empire. In the Cold War and beyond, Israel indeed became a nexus for international banking and technology, punching far above its weight in global affairs. Furthermore, Israel plays prominently in many end times theories. Religious conspiracists see it as the stage for the final act, the rebuilding of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, the coming of Antichrist, etc. The Rothschilds, with their deep involvement there, are cast as facilitators of prophecy, either divine or diabolical depending on one's perspective. It's often noted that the Israeli Supreme Court building in Jerusalem was funded by the Rothschilds, and its architecture allegedly contains occult symbols, like an obelisk and pyramid structure in the garden. Photographs of the building's cornerstone ceremony show members of the Rothschild family alongside Israeli officials, placing a time capsule under a Masonic-like pyramid. Such imagery sets conspiracy forums ablaze, with claims that the country's justice system was literally founded under Illuminati symbolism. All this ties into the broader idea of a one-world government, a secular kingdom of the false god. After World War II, the United Nations was formed, with Rothschild-backed individuals like the Rockefellers donating the land for the UN HQ in New York. The Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF, set up global financial rules, systems that international bankers heavily influenced. Over the decades, we've seen increasing globalization, often beneficial to banking interests. Conspiracy researchers argue that the Rothschilds and their peers have intentionally fostered this interconnected world. The end goal? Centralized global control, one currency, one government, one religion, perhaps a technocratic secularism or a false inclusive spirituality, all under the demiurge's thumb. In this vision, Jerusalem might one day be the capital of the world, seat of a world leader, some say a false messiah. Notably, in 2020, a group of world business leaders formed the Council for Inclusive Capitalism with the Vatican, which we discussed, and they rather grandly call themselves the Guardians for Inclusive Capitalism. Guardians, a term echoing the idea of guardians of a new order. Pope Francis and Lady Rothschild jointly guiding this Council of Guardians. To the conspiracy-minded, it reads like the prelude to global governance, cloaked in good intentions. Of course, to more grounded analysts, these are just influential people addressing societal issues. But in our exploration of the conspiracy narrative, nothing is ever just what it seems. Everything is connected. Israel, the Vatican, Washington, London, the Rothschild reach ties them together in a web of influence. We see world leaders bowing at Rothschild funerals. When Baron Edmund died in 1934, dignitaries from many nations attended. When Lord Evelyn de Rothschild died in 2022, tributes poured in from princes and prime ministers. It suggests a quiet acknowledgement of fealty, or at least respect for power, from the visible rulers to the invisible ones. In the conspiratorial worldview, national sovereignty is an illusion. The real loyalty of the global elite is to their own class and hidden religion of power. They foment nationalism or internationalism whenever it suits the agenda. They helped create Israel, yet they might betray Israel if a larger plan necessitates it. The only constant is concentrating control. After all, a false god does not share dominion willingly. If the demiurge works through the Rothschilds, it is relentlessly driving toward absolute control, politically, one world government, financially, one global bank key currency, and spiritually, one pseudo-religion of materialism or occultism. Chillingly, many public trends echoed this march: talk of cashless society, global digital currency, of a great reset economically, a term openly used by economic forums, of universal ID systems, and so forth. Even mainstream figures like French President Macron have called for global governance. Is it a coincidence, or the careful execution of a plan long laid down by an elite cabal? The pieces fit the puzzle too well, say believers. The Rothschilds, sitting on centuries of wealth, have quietly bankrolled think tanks, foundations, and revolutions alike to push the world ever closer to a unified order, their order. Occult dominion, blood sacrifice, and symbol power at this scale goes beyond gold and guns. It delves into the ritualistic. Conspiracy law contends that the global elite engage in symbolic rites, bizarre to outsiders, but deeply meaningful to those in the know, to cement their control and telegraph their allegiance to the false light. The Rothschild family, with their flair for the extravagant, have provided some tantalizing glimpses into this theater of the occult. One infamous example, the Rothschild Surrealist Ball of 1972. Hosted by Baroness Marie-Hélène de Rothschild at the family's Château de Ferrières, this was no ordinary aristocratic fete. The invitations, printed in reverse script, decipherable only in a mirror, went out to Europe's glitterati, Salvador Dali, Audrey Hepburn, and the like. On the night of December 12, 1972, guests arrived to a chateau illuminated in red, as if drenched in blood, and a labyrinthine dinner party unfolded. Servants dressed as cats prowled and catered to the elite, who themselves wore surreal and often macabre costumes. Baroness de Rothschild greeted people wearing a gigantic stag's head mask, weeping tears of diamonds, a nod, perhaps, to the Moloch-like horned deity of law. Audrey Hepburn was adorned with a bird cage over her head, a live bird inside, literally caged thought. At dinner, they served a life-size nude woman cake, consumed in effigy, and desserts made to look like human babies. The night's imagery was a collage of the eerie and the decadent. 3 masked guests at the Rothschild Surrealist Ball, 1972, a glimpse into the elite's masquerade of esoteric symbolism. Attendees described the event as whimsical art. But conspiracy researchers have a more sinister read, a public glimpse at the elite's occult preoccupations. The Surrealist Ball was replete with esoteric symbolism, quasi-satanic undertones, and hints of ritual. Why a stag's head, often associated with sacrificial rites? Why mirrors and backward writing, methods used in occult initiation? Why the simulation of cannibalistic imagery with human-like food? They posit that such parties are not mere fun, they are ceremonies, disguising ritual as play. Perhaps the elite believe these symbolic acts curry favor with dark forces or announce their intentions to the universe. In occult lore, symbols and hidden in plain sight gestures carry power. At the very least, these gatherings show that the super-rich enjoy themes of dominion, predation, and taboo in their leisure, themes that mirror the conspiracy view of their real-world behavior. Beyond parties, conspiracists point to things like Bohemian Grove, the secretive annual retreat in California where global leaders, including US presidents, have rituals under a giant owl statue, symbolizing Minerva or Moloch. While not directly a Rothschild event, it underscores a pattern: the most powerful men engaging in pagan-esque ceremonies, druid robes, effigies burned, far from public eye. It's exactly the sort of thing one would expect if indeed a hidden priesthood exists. And John Todd's testimony already told us, the Council of 13, it's the Rothschilds' private coven. They choose every member personally. He alleged that even famous writers like C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were secret members of occult orders affiliated with this network. How strange that Tolkien's Lord of the Rings depicts rings of power and a Dark Lord, pure fantasy, of course, but in conspiracy thinking, art often imitates life in coded ways. Then there are the truly dark allegations of human sacrifice and blood rituals, which we touched on via Svali's Vatican story. Svali claimed that Illuminati families, Rothschild included, practice rituals going back to ancient Babylon, child sacrifice, sexual rites, trauma-based mind control. Frighteningly, separate testimonies from survivors of programs like MKUltra, a real CIA program that involved abuse and hypnosis, speak of satanic ritual abuse at high levels. Could it be that the very top echelons of society partake in literal blood rites to empower their rule? As outrageous as it sounds, history is full of elite cruelty behind closed doors, from Caligula to child-abusing royals in later eras. Consider the case of Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier whose 2019 arrest and death pulled back the curtain on a global web of elite predation. Epstein ran a private island and estates where he trafficked underage girls to powerful men, allegedly recording the encounters for blackmail. His little black book and flight logs included royalty, Prince Andrew, tech moguls, politicians, and billionaires. Among those he courted after his first conviction as a sex offender was Ariane de Rothschild, CEO of the Edmond de Rothschild Group and wife of Benjamin de Rothschild. Leaked schedules show Epstein had over a dozen meetings with her, discussing business and perhaps more. The Wall Street Journal reported extensive financial entanglements between Epstein and Ariane de Rothschild's bank, including Epstein seeking her help to find a new personal assistant, strangely even after his crimes were known. What was the nature of their alliance? We don't know. But Epstein's operation is widely believed in conspiracy circles to have been a Mossad or CIA-linked blackmail program, entrapping the rich and powerful with underage honey traps. If that's true, it means a faction of the elite was keeping another faction in line through sexual compromat. And here we have a Rothschild in Epstein's orbit, suggesting that if Epstein was a puppet master, the Rothschilds were at least aware, if not involved. Epstein's mysterious death in jail, officially a suicide, though many cry foul, only fuels the fire. Was he silenced by his powerful friends to keep their secrets? For the narrative we are following, Epstein is but one tentacle of a much larger beast. His activities, exploitation of the innocent, secret gatherings of the mighty, private islands with temples. Epstein had a strange temple-like structure on his island, all echo themes of ritual and perversion that align with what we'd expect the demiurge servants to partake in. Blood doesn't always have to mean literal sacrifice. Sometimes it's the spiritual blood, the innocence of children, the dignity of victims, that is offered up. It's notable how many major scandals in recent years involve human trafficking, pedophile rings, and abuse cover-ups, from Hollywood's casting couch revelations to high-ranking clergy abuse. The theory posits that these aren't isolated sins, but systemic, the currency of dark control. By ensnaring one another in heinous crimes, members of the cabal bind themselves with bonds of secrecy and guilt. In effect, they all become hostages to the demiurge, trapped by their own appetites and fear of exposure. And what of the world at large? Conspiracy theorists argue that the entire modern culture has been subtly steered by these elite through social engineering. The Tavistock Institute in London, with rumoured Rothschild connections, pioneered psychological manipulation of the masses. Entertainment, news media, and academia are said to weave narratives that keep populations docile, divided, and distracted. Consider how the news cycle often promotes fear of terrorism, of pandemics, of climate doom, keeping people in a chronic state of anxiety. In a Gnostic sense, fear and ignorance are the shackles the demiurge uses to keep humanity spiritually asleep. And who peddles fear and falsehood at a grand scale? The media conglomerates owned by a few wealthy families. While the Rothschilds do not openly own major media, claims they own Reuters or AP are false. They have stakes in tech and influence via their extensive networks. For instance, Rothschild investment bankers sit on boards and advise corporations across industries, quietly influencing policy and content. We saw how they partner with big tech in initiatives. The Council for Inclusive Capitalism includes companies like Salesforce and Visa. The lines between government, big business, and media blur in what some call the deep state or synarchy, ruled by a secret elite. And at the very top of that pyramid, many argue, sits the Rothschild consortium. Climax, the veil lifts. We have traveled through 2 centuries of secrets and whispers. Patterns emerge. The Rothschilds, by amassing unrivaled wealth, positioned themselves to transcend borders and kings. With that came entanglement in revolutions and reactions, piety and depravity, always cloaked behind the scenes. Is it any wonder that in 2025, their name still evokes the specter of a one world order? Even mainstream sources acknowledge the Rothschild family has frequently been the subject of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, a fact which we must note. Indeed, it's crucial to separate legitimate inquiry from prejudice. The narrative we've outlined can easily tip into hateful tropes if one blames the Jews as a whole for the actions of a few powerful individuals. But our focus has been specific, the actions and alleged schemes of one elite family, who happen to be Jewish by heritage, but whose purported agenda has nothing to do with helping the average Jewish person. Quite the opposite, as history shows they, like other elites, often profit even as common folk of all creeds suffer. So what do we see when the puzzle pieces are fitted together? A portrait of extraordinary power, used in extraordinary ways. We see a family that might have seeded wars to reshape nations and reap riches. A family that might have toppled or created governments with a stroke of the bank pen. We see their fingerprints on the Bank of England, on the Federal Reserve's conception. Paul Warburg, a Rothschild associate, designed the Fed in 1913, on the European Union Central Bank, and beyond. We see them at the table with popes and premiers, yet also mingling with known degenerates and occultists. It's as if the Rothschilds ride 2 horses, one in the visible world of high society and philanthropy, the other in the hidden world of cults and conspiracies. They fund universities and hospitals with one hand, and, if the theories hold, fund covert operations and secret orders with the other. But why? If this grand theory is true, what is the endgame? Here we arrive at the ultimate revelation: the Rothschilds, as agents of the demiurge, seek to maintain humanity in a state of spiritual subjugation. All the pieces serve this goal. By controlling finance, they bind nations in debt, modern debt slavery. By fomenting wars, they create chaos, fear, and death, a mass louche, energy, harvest for the dark archons, as some occultists would say. By dominating media and education, they sculpt a false reality, keeping people fixated on material pursuits, divided by trivialities, unaware of the spiritual cage around them. By dabbling in transhumanism and science, perhaps they intend to literally alter human biology or connect us to a technological matrix of control. And by engaging in ritual, if they do, they continuously affirm their pact with the demiurge, drawing power from beyond as they tighten the noose around humanity's neck. In this view, the Rothschilds and their ilk have been gradually building the demiurge's kingdom on Earth. A dystopia that doesn't look like a prison, more like a glimmering global society where everyone is numbered, tracked, and compliant for their own good. Where dissent is snuffed out not by force, but by engineered consensus and social credit. It brings to mind George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World in equal measure. Orwellian in surveillance and thought control, Huxleyan in making the masses love their servitude through bread and circuses, and perhaps mind-numbing drugs. Is it coincidence that Huxley's brother headed the United Nations at one point? Or that Orwell had connections to Fabian socialists funded by wealthy patrons? The tendrils of elite planning run deep. Now, as a powerful climax draws near, picture the culmination: a financial crash so severe it makes way for a single global digital currency, controlled by central banks that the Rothschilds influence. A series of conflicts or a world war that persuade nations to dissolve sovereignty in favor of a world government to end war forever. Perhaps even a staged alien contact or false flag event that unites people under a global authority. Some conspiracists speak of Project Blue Beam, a supposed plan to simulate a fake alien invasion or second coming. In all scenarios, the answer offered will be the same: trust the global system, relinquish individual power. And at the top of that system, behind the velvet curtains, sit the likes of the Rothschilds, the quiet engineers of the greatest consolidation of power in history. It sends a chill down the spine, doesn't it? It would be the ultimate bait and switch: chaos, fear, and desperation used to herd humanity into a gilded cage. We would wake up in a world where one central power dictates all aspects of life, for our safety and the common good, of course. But in truth, it would be the demiurge enthroned, feeding off the spiritual suppression of 8 billion souls who forgot what freedom ever felt like. Awakening, breaking the false god spell. If this narrative is dark, it is not without light. No conspiracy is invincible, even the longest night yields to dawn. As our journey ends, we turn to hope and resistance, the antithesis of the demiurge's control: human awakening. First, understand that knowledge is power. The very act of discussing these possibilities, however outlandish some may find them, is part of shining light into the shadows. The alleged Illuminati thrive in secrecy; they count on being dismissed as a fantasy. By contrast, we the people grow stronger the more we connect dots and share forbidden truths. Think of the past decade. Millions have become aware of terms like New World Order, Deep State, Pizzagate, Epstein's client list, etc. Leaks and whistleblowers have exposed ugly realities: mass surveillance programs, elite pedophilia rings, government mind control experiments like MKUltra, which is fully documented. Each revelation pokes a hole in the veil, making it harder for the false god's agents to operate unchecked.